Welcome, everyone, to episode 19 of the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor. This has been something I've been wanting to do from day one, man. Since I first started this podcast, I've really wanted to get this guy on for a long time. He's a guy I've known for over 11 years now, dating back to my first band, Lives Page, back in 2005. This guy has had a very interesting career in the Tampa, St. Pete area. Some of you outside of the area may not know him. Some of you might, but my guest tonight was a member, was sort of the founding member, I should say, the lead singer and bass player of a band called Soulfound, which was around from 1999 through 2009. Now think about that. Think about how tough it is not only to start a band at a local level, but also keep it together for that long. 10 years is a long time in local band years. And I gotta tell you, these guys had a lot of success when they were together. They were originally formed in Gainesville, later relocated to Tampa and St. Pete, and over the years they've had airplay on some of the local stations, known as 97X and 98 Rock. They've had some of their videos be played on Fuse TV, and I think one of their songs called "After the Rush" was on the reality show Laguna Beach on MTV. Do anyone remember that? Their song "After the Rush" was on that show, and they were the winner of the Tampa Bay Times' Ultimate Local Bands in 2007. Like I said, these are guys I go back with for years and years and years, and I've been both a friend and a fan of this guy and his band and all his music, and he still continues to make music today. It's always interesting seeing guys you came up with. It's sort of a different chapter of their lives. I mean, he's now a husband and a father to two beautiful twin girls, and he's also a journalist, entrepreneur, producer. I mean, this guy wears a lot of different hats, but he's definitely been a fixture of the Tampa Bay local music scene for many, many years. So I'm just gonna introduce him right now. Please welcome to the Phoenix Report, Ivan Peña.
What's up, Jack? Thanks for having me.
Not much, man. Like I said, I'm glad I was able to get you finally on this thing. Like I said, from the time I started this podcast, for me it was all about not only reconnecting with guys I play with now, but also to kind of go back into the past and catch up with different guys that I've came up with over the years, and obviously, and people who have interesting stories, and you've certainly fit all those descriptions. So it's it's really like, I know that you have a lot of different things going on, especially since Soulfound. I mean, it's been many years since that band broke up, but it always has to come into the conversation because just of how long and how impressive you guys' run was. I mean, 99 through 2009. It's, you don't get a lot of local bands that have that kind of run and have that kind of, regional success. Is it, I mean, what are your thoughts looking back on all those years?
Well, it's like any relationship. There's some good points and some low points, right?
Right.
Keeping a band together is tough, man. Like you said, for 10 years with, no real monetary or critical success outside of our own little corner of the world. Sometimes it's hard to compete with life, with time, with attention, with just boredom even,
Right.
So, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about marketing, which became my livelihood, right? So I cut my teeth in marketing thanks to the band.
Is that what you went to school for? Was it marketing?
I went for advertising. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I changed my major after starting the band. Like I was originally a microbiology pre-med track kind of guy, and then I discovered the power of being in a band, and then somehow that took over. And
see, that's what I keep saying, man. It's okay, kids. Stay in school. You can still do both. It's possible.
Totally. Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm glad I never dropped out of school and chucked it all aside to go tour. I mean, some days I wish I would have done that, but, in the grand scheme of things, 10, 15 years down the road after, playing, you need to have something else to do because it's a 1 in a million shot where that you're going to make a good living.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to have any,
or any living, really. I mean, let's be honest.
It's tough. It's tough, even for guys that tour.
Exactly, man. I mean, it's one of those things that sounds great when you're 19 and 20, but when you're staring at 30, it's a little bit tougher, you know.
Yeah, it's agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But yeah, I mean, you guys really did have an impressive run. You know, like you said, like exposure on Fuse, exposure, you know, just locally. I mean, a lot of people knew who you were. It wasn't just your you know, friends and family showing up. Like, you guys had legitimate fans of Soulfound, and that sustained for a while.
It did. I mean, we had. It's funny because at the end of Soulfound, we were making a documentary about the band, and we had outlined our history in like 3 phases, and then. Right. You know, like, wow, we've been around that long that we can look back and kind of catalog things into phases, right? So, but that first phase was when we were in Gainesville. You know, we were a bunch of kids, a bunch of punks that just wanted to, you know, get wasted and get laid. You know, we didn't care what we played. We were playing super weird proggy pop tunes, like, and it was so much fun, you know. And then, you know, that was cool. We were on the radio up there. We played some big shows. We opened up for some cool bands. And then from there, we opened up for we used to open for a bunch of hair metal bands, like really? Warrant. We opened up for Warrant a couple of times while we lived up there.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense because I mean, in the late '90s, early 2000s, they were touring, and it was like kind of a thing where it's like, you know, during most of the '90s, they had a tough time getting work, but you know, during that time they were able to put together some successful package tours and stuff like that. But that's still that's a pretty big deal when you're in your first band in college and opening for bands that have had some big success.
Totally. I know, it was great. It was a lot of fun back then. Man, we played with so many bands. I couldn't begin to tell you. I think Yellow Card opened for us back then.
Oh wow. Oh yeah. No, those guys were big time. Ocean Avenue, all that.
They blew up. I mean, who else did we played with a bunch of bands. Like I remember seeing Hoobastank was playing the day before.
Oh wow!
We were playing up there. We were there like flying for our show, and then they were sound checking. I'm like, oh, look at these guys.
Yeah.
We played with so many bands. And back then, we didn't care. We just wanted to rock, and just we burned a lot of bridges, unfortunately, back in the early days.
Right. Well, now was Dan Kano? Was he in from the beginning, or was he? I mean, he was still.
He was pretty early on, but he was not an original member.
Right. I know, because I know you started the band with 3 other guys.
Yep.
But I know like Dan was around, you know, kind of like the longest, you know, member in the band besides yourself. You know, when did he join the band?
If memory serves, I think he joined in November of 2000. And,
okay.
It was on the heels of we had a drummer when we started that was kind of borrowed from another band, and just because, you know, we wanted to play, and then we ended up recording. That was like January of '99 is when we started practicing, and then or February of '99 is our first show. Then over the summer we recorded in Miami, and we had this amazing jazz drummer called Nomar Negroni.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is like a Grammy-winning drummer now.
Wow.
You know, he plays Latin jazz all over the world essentially, and he was friends with one of our guitar players, Gary, at the time. And he came on board and recorded on our first EP, or 7-song EP, and he like learned the songs in 2 days, and we tracked with him, and it was amazing. But then we were out of a drummer, so then when we got back to Gainesville, we went through a couple of guys, and then we found Dan, actually Gary again. Gary, back then Gary was kind of like the business center of the band, and I was just more the creative, you know, frontman, you know, broody frontman guy.
Right.
But Gary.
Now Gary was one of the guitarists, or
yeah. Gary was this shredder of a guitar player. The guy was a beast, still is a beast. He played with us when we did the reunion show 3 years ago. He came back.
That's right.
But he kind of, it was awesome because he's the one that started the guitar player curse for Soulfound, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I mean, speaking of that, I mean, you know, to me, like the core members of the band was yourself, Dan Kano on drums, and Sam Register on guitar. And I know you guys had a lot of different fourth members come in and out, and we'll definitely get to that in a minute. But I mean, I'm fascinated by the the fact that you guys started in Gainesville, went down to Miami to record, went back up to Gainesville, and then eventually you found the band made its way, I should say, maybe not all the members, but the band definitely found its way to Tampa, St. Pete. That to me is fascinating, how you guys were all able, or at least I guess you were able to kind of broker that. I mean, how did that all come together?
You make it sound like it was so calculated. It's funny because phase 2 of the band started when we decided to move down here. At that point, Dan being from Clearwater, and one of the guitar players, the guy that pretty much took over for Gary, his name's Chris Piccolo.
Mm-hmm.
He went to school here in Clearwater as well. So, and the other guy, Chris, also in the band, we used to call him Dick back in the day. He was one of the founding members too. He was from Miami. And then when we were, graduated from college, we were up there kind of just trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're going to stay in Gainesville. We're going to move somewhere. And because Dan and Piccolo were both from here, we said, well, screw it. Let's just go to Clearwater since, we have family there, we got friends there, and there might be it's a big enough city where, I think we'll be able to sustain the band. And, at the time it was kind of coming down, the reputation for Tampa was always like a metal town. But at the time, you can come here and play. There were some cool bands that we knew of back then, like Pulling Birds. Would play down here a lot. We had some friends that were in bands down here, so I don't know. It was either that or going to South Florida, which we didn't want to do. So
right.
We ended up here. It wasn't very romantic. We just said, well, we're not going to stay in Gainesville. What are we going to do? Let's go to Clearwater. Let's go to Tampa.
That must have been sort of a bit of a gamble for you, not being from the Tampa St. Pete area originally. I know that you have some family down in South Florida, but you were born in the Dominican Republic. Now, I mean, how old were you when you guys moved to South Florida?
I moved to the States when I was like 13. So, I mean, now I spend most of my life here, but, so yeah, it was a pretty interesting time.
Gotcha.
It's kind of a weird move.
Gotcha. And the rest of your family is down in like Fort Lauderdale, that area?
Yeah, we're all scattered, but we moved here. Me and my 3 brothers. We moved here with my mom.
Very cool.
Summer of 93. Yeah, 93, 94, 93. It's all fuzzy now, man.
Right. How did they react to say when you were like, "Hey, Mom, I'm packing up and moving to Tampa, St. Pete because I'm in this band"? How did she take that?
She didn't care. She knew I fulfilled my obligation as a son to complete my college education.
There you go. And so she's like, yeah, go have fun.
Yeah, at that point, I was like, she wasn't going to have to support me or anything, so I don't think she really cared. I think she was glad that I stayed in the state. Originally, for a little while there, we're toying with maybe moving out west, going to make a go out in Cali or something.
Right.
I remember even having a dream, like me and Disco piled into his Merlot colored Camry back then with all our gear, and we moved to California.
Nice.
That never panned out.
Not quite, but I mean, like you said, Tampa St. Pete was a pretty cool music area. At least at the time that I remember when around 04, it was 05 when my band first started. There were a ton of bands that definitely had a similar sound to you guys, because I think. Because I look back at a lot of rock music in the 2000s, and obviously people are gonna look at sort of the alternative rock bands, and I guess that's kind of how you could classify, for lack of a better term, could classify Soulfound's sound. You guys are sort of like alternative rock, mixed in with a little bit of pop punk and power pop and stuff like that. And I apologize if those aren't the correct terms to use. I don't know, but people looked at bands like Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance of that era, and not that you guys sounded identical to that, but you guys kind of fit in that mold a little bit. And there were a lot of other bands in the Tampa St. Pete area at the time that sort of had a similar vibe. Do you think that helped you guys early on?
It's funny because those were all the same bands we were really getting into at the time. A lot of those, emo bands, I guess, on the rise around that time in the early 2000s. That's what we were listening to. So the music kind of became that. It's funny because if you would have, all the people that listened to us back in Gainesville and during phase 1 were like, what the fuck is all this screaming you guys are doing in your music now? What is up with this?
Oh, yeah.
What is the screamo stuff you guys are trying out? And we're like, well, we like it, so we're having fun. So we started writing more pop songs even. They became poppier overall with that kind of energy. And not that we ever fit with the emo bands, like you said. And again,
right.
They're just, it is what it is. We all grew up listening to the same punk rock. We all grew up listening to the Police, and that punk new wave sound that is essentially where all of that comes from.
Yeah, and you guys would cover like stuff like "Message in a Bottle" live. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
the Police influence there was there. I mean, I was hesitant to even like use the word emo because I think that's like a dirty word for some people. It's like, I mean, I get hung up on labels myself, but it's like I didn't want people to be like, no, that's not what we were, but I'm like, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to compare you, or not compare, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally. And I'm okay with it, man. It doesn't bug me. We were trying to go after the same fans, so we try to play that game a little bit too. So, and it helped us at the time. I mean, we did get to play Warped Tour a couple of dates. We did get to open up for like Hawthorne Heights, which was kind of like a big emo band at the time. We played open for them at Janus. I mean, we got to some of the label conversations we had back in those heydays were with those types of labels, and we were not pop enough for the major labels. We were not emo enough for those indie labels. So that was always kind of our struggle. But phase 2 there became about embracing that whole emo mentality, and so we were okay with it.
Gotcha. When did Sam come into the band?
Sam came into the band when Piccolo left the band in about 2000, late 04, early 05, I want to say. Sam, his sister was one of our, I don't want to say oldest fans, but she's also a friend, but she was a fan from the beginning, back in the Gainesville days. And then through her, Sam kind of got our music, and he became a fan. And then when the opportunity came up, Piccolo pretty much groomed him to be his replacement. Taught him the songs, and then we just said, all right, this kid wants to play with us, so let's bring him in.
That's cool. Well, why did Piccolo end up leaving?
Same reason. Gary quit. They were both kind of ambitious dudes. They wanted to do more, I think Piccolo around that time got married, and he was going to move out of town and stuff and go be a professional. So,
gotcha.
We're still really good friends, and he is gonna, we are working on a show that includes Piccolo and Gary both. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, kind of teasing that a little bit. We'll definitely get into that for a bit. But what were some of your favorite shows to play? I mean, during that whole run, because I know you guys did a million things like Janus and Warped Tour, which are all huge things. I mean, I've been around for a while. I haven't done stuff like that. So it's what would you say were some of the highlights, some of your favorite shows that really stick out to you after all this time?
Favorite shows. So up there has to be when we played the Daytona 500. We played in the infield there, and it was huge. It's a NASCAR event. You know what I mean? It was packed, and I used to make fun of NASCAR until that day, and ever since then I have nothing but respect for the sport. Because that was a lot of fun, like being in the infield there and playing with cars just like swirling around you, going, 200 miles per hour, however fast they go.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, the Daytona 500, that's like the Super Bowl of NASCAR. Like it's a really, really big event. That's really impressive that you guys got booked on it, for one thing. But that must have been a really cool experience just because of how many people show up.
It was, and we partied with some good old boys after that too, which was even better.
Nice. How did they react to the sound, to the band? Were they digging it?
Yeah, totally, man. We were having a good time, and
they weren't like, play some Skinner.
Nah, I mean, they're, like I said, all the stereotypes you think you're going to encounter, I did not see any of them. So,
well, there you go.
They were having a good time with us. We played some fun covers in that gig. I remember we played some Rush, and we played some Eagles, Hotel California, I think. Nice. So I think that stuff kind of won them over. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man.
That's so awesome to say. I mean, no matter what you've done, you can say like, yeah, I played the Daytona 500. I've had, I've been on TV, I've been on, on the radio and all this stuff. I mean, that's those little moments, man. That's what this is all about,
I agree, man. And we had a lot of them.
Definitely. What were some of the other highlights? I mean, as far as shows and just different like really cool moments that you guys had.
So we went on a tour one time up to like Chicago and like Pennsylvania. There was like a music conference we were playing up in Pennsylvania. I can't remember where it was, but we decided to do this run, and we played in this middle of nowhere town in Wisconsin. We got booked. I don't know how we came across this gig. I think it was our manager at the time, just knew somebody who knew somebody in the middle of nowhere in a place called Marshfield, Wisconsin. And when I say the middle of nowhere,
were you guys managed by Bjergit?
yeah, we worked with Bigger for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her. Really cool chick. She wanted to work with my first band for a while. I don't know what happened with that. It kind of fell through. But yeah, really cool girl. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, Birgit was responsible for a lot of the big stuff that happened around that time. So she definitely helped us a lot, and we're still really good friends. So that worked out nicely.
God, I haven't talked to her in years. I would love to get in touch with her, see what she's up to. But some of the other the big shows that you mentioned. You said you had a few others like that. Not quite Daytona 500 level, but still some cool stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, we played Janus a bunch of times, and opening up for big acts, like I said, like Warrant. We opened up for emo bands. There was just a fun place to play when it was packed. And the thing is, some of my favorite memories are not packed shows. Like that Marshfield, Wisconsin show, there was nobody there, but we played in this church in this middle of a little town. They treated us like royalty. They closed down a restaurant just for us. They fed us this, menu made for us. Like they fed us Spotted Cow beer, which is, by the way, if you never had Spotted Cow, it's like the pride of Wisconsin. It's fantastic.
I have not. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So New Glarus is the brewery, but so I mean it was awesome. And then we go to play in this like church because it's like church turned rec center thing, and we're out there just like delirious from being on the road for a couple of weeks, and we've been just only around each other essentially for that whole time. So. Yeah, it was pretty hilarious, but we made this bootleg from that. And I think to me, that was one of my favorite moments, being in the middle of nowhere across the country playing to no one and just having a blast.
Nice. There was one thing I remember, one show that your band and my old band did together that always kind of stuck out. It was, there was this place in St. Augustine. It was called Club Fusion. Do you remember that? It was like a Japanese steakhouse by day.
Yeah.
But they had a stage, and I guess at night the restaurant was closed. It was like this older Japanese couple, I guess. They were running the place, but they just loved to have live music in there, and it was like Soulfound, Lives Page, and like maybe Last Day Alive and a few other bands, and ended up doing this. But it was just like I remember they paid us really well, even though there was hardly anybody in the crowd. But just something about that room. It was just like one of the weirdest. It was like one of the weirdest setups that we had ever done. But it was great. I mean, do you remember that show?
I do remember, only because one of our guitar players' girlfriend at the time like documented that whole trip. I remember having a bunch of pictures from that. We had some really good pictures from that show. So, yeah, I would definitely remember that. But trust me, that was not one of the weirdest places we played.
I don't doubt it.
Not even close. That doesn't hit the bottom 20 at all.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, it definitely stuck out to me for some reason. I don't know. It was great. It was unusual.
It was unusual, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And, I mean, you played Janus a bunch of times. That was always... I mean, to this day, that's like, I'm always fascinated by that because it's one of the bigger outdoor venues in St. Pete, and I've always been like, man, I would give anything to play Janus Landing, or Janus Live now, as it's called. But yeah, you guys played several stuff like there. Like I remember there would be like charity events you would play there, and just all kinds of different shows that you would play there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We used to take in any show we got, man. I mean, that was our deal. That was our mission. Is like, show comes our way, we play it.
Yeah. We
never really told people no, even though we knew that we might not make any money or would have to drive 4 hours to maybe get gas money to get back.
Right.
We used to drive to Georgia, every 2-3 months, to play at this one place outside Atlanta in Jonesboro. That was like, middle of nowhere by like, touring standards. But man, every time we went there, we had a packed house and we had a blast. You know what I mean? So we knew that we weren't going to make any money, really, because just the gas alone was going to get eaten up in that. But we still did it because we wanted to get in front of as many people as possible. And you go where the gigs are.
I mean, that's what you got to do. I mean, a lot of people want to be selective about taking gigs and, I don't know if I want to kill my draw. But I mean, especially in the early days, that if you're trying to establish yourself in a new area, you have to kind of play out as much as you possibly can.
I agree. That was our philosophy for a long time. We were never wasn't until towards the end, I would say, that we got a little more selective with gigs and started saying no.
Oh yeah, I mean,
started buying into the whole, we started buying into the whole, what's too much in our hometown, playing too much.
Well, I mean, at that point, that was a legitimate thing, though. You guys had already reached kind of that status where you could afford to do that. But I mean, I'm saying early on when you're starting off.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree with that now. You know what I mean? Like, I think that in hindsight, that was probably a bad move. It's not it's not like you have to, bill every show like it's the last show on earth, that people have to go to. But, like I see bands and see people that play all the time, whether it's like the full band or just the singer playing an acoustic thing or just getting out and playing in front of people all the time. I feel like, when bands start being selective without seeing the reward for being selective, it's just being selective for the sake of being selective because that's what you're supposed to do, is counterproductive.
I would agree with that because, people have short memories. And, nothing. I mean, putting yourself out there, you might think it's overkill, but a lot of times it helps.
It does, man. I mean, it just takes one person to be at that show, and that one person could be a fan for life or a friend for life or the connection you need. And that's how we met a lot of people. So it wasn't the packed shows that got us further along. It was the shows where there weren't a lot of people there, and we were able to make a personal connection, and we're able to really cultivate the relationships, so.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you guys sure did. I mean, what were I guess another question I had in mind was what were some of your favorite songs to play from from the Soulfound era as far as that goes?
Oh man, it's like your children. It's like, how can you pick a favorite?
Right.
But I don't know, like playing out of every album, there was always like one or two rockers that we always really liked playing because we just liked thrashing around on stage for them. One of my favorite songs to play is from our first EP called Notes from the Lonely Chair. That song was like a really riffy song, and we're going to play it at the reunion show. I mean, it's like one of our first songs, if not our actual first song that we played. So that's always fun. Don't Go from Tomorrow Can Wait is always a fun one to play just because we used to close with that all the time. American Anything off Tomorrow Can Wait was also a fun one for us. And then Stuff Off is a rock band. It's funny because when we practiced, we rehearsed for the last show, and even when we got together earlier this year to jam, or late last year to jam, all the old stuff we remembered like the back of our hands, but like the newer stuff we were kind of struggling with remembering parts and little nuances here and there because we play those old songs for so long. And so a lot of those Is a Rock Band songs still feel new to me. So whenever we get to play, Looking for Me or By Myself or Occupation, it's always fun because it feels like a new song still.
Nice. I mean, some of my favorites were always sort of, the stuff that you guys would always play. I always like You Only Get One and Fire were always kind of my two favorites.
Cool. Yeah, those are on the set list, so I'll be happy.
How many LPs and EPs did you guys put out, like in total? Because I have like the anthology CD and everything. That was like 3 EPs in one. And
yeah.
How many records did you guys put out?
Let me think. So 2 EPs in Gainesville, then a full length Tomorrow Can Wait when we moved down here, then 2 more EPs, and then Is a Rock Band. So, and then we did a live EP after that. So I guess 7. Is that 7? I think so.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a lot of material, especially like you said for an independent rock band. Just kind of doing it on your own at that grassroots level. It says a lot, man.
Thanks, man. I mean, we always had more songs, always wanted to do more, but for some reason we never, you can always look back, and hindsight is always, 2020 and clear, and, obviously why didn't we think of those things? But
hey, man, recording's expensive.
But it really is, and it takes time and, discipline.
At least good recordings are expensive. You can do anything at home, but like really like good studio stuff, that's, it costs some money.
Yeah, and you gotta work hard to make that money, especially So yeah, we did that for our Lives Will Live So Far EP. We were the house band at Gasoline Alley. Remember Gasoline Alley in Clearwater?
Oh yeah,
the old school one. Yeah, we were there. We were the house band for a summer. Like on Wednesday nights, we were doing live band karaoke. We call it Soulfound Karaoke.
Nice.
We did that for like 3 months to be able to record, and we ended up recording with James Wisner, who was like the emo guy at the time. He recorded Dashboard Confessional.
Oh, wow.
He recorded, some of our favorite albums, like Furthest Seems Forever. I mean, at that time, we were like really into Furthest Seems Forever. So, I mean, the fact that we were going to be able to work with Wisner was fantastic. And it's funny because when we went in there, he was working on Under Oaths. You know, their only Chasing Safety album. And after we left, the Academy was coming in to work on their first album. So it was kind of cool that we had a week here in between these two kind of up and coming bands, you know, to kind of work with this legend in our mind, you know. So, and that was great, but it cost a bunch of money, you know, like, and we were never really able to do that again because we just couldn't raise the money after that. But
Definitely, man. You know, I mean, it's funny you look back at that period of time in music, and that was like sort of like the vibe as far as like, you know, rock music that sort of crossed into the mainstream. You know, whether or not people were a fan of it or not, you know, that was like the big thing at the time. Those alternative bands, I guess the emo bands, for lack of a better term, were so huge for so many years there. I'm trying to think of like what. I mean, of like what's going on now in music that's really like the equivalent of that, and I'm kind of hard pressed to think of that. And maybe it's a sign of me getting older, but I'm trying to think like it doesn't seem like there's a real overall vibe right now when it comes to like rock music, and mainstream rock music, I should say.
yeah, I don't think there's such a thing as mainstream rock in the same way that we used to have. I mean, there's bands out there. There's bands out there like Royal Blood.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
Death from Above, 1979, like
Mm-hmm.
that have that kind of rock and, you know, riff vibe, kind of darker sounding stuff. That sounds really good. I love that stuff. But there's also a lot of really cool indie rock out there that I'm, you know, that has that I think took the place of some of those emo bands back then. But then again, what do I know? I'm an old fart too, so.
No, but it's, you know, it's just always funny, you know, looking back at that time and in place, and you guys were right in that perfect era, but still original enough to stand out on your own and do your own thing, which I thought was a really good place to be in at that time.
We thought so too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you know, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
We're still holding out that, you know, one day one person's going to discover one of our EPs and it's going to change everybody's life. It'll be like the Anvil movie.
I know, right? Well, thankfully you guys were much better than that band, let me tell you.
Yeah, they were pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is.
They were committed, you know.
They were committed.
Can't fault them for that, you know.
That's true.
But yeah. Then I remember reading about your song being on Laguna Beach and being on Fuse and stuff like that, and you guys hadn't really had too much, you know, in the way of like major label support, but being the entrepreneur that you are, you did found your own group, and that was Mohawk Bomb Records. Tell me about that.
Mohawk Bomb was the beginning of Phase 3.
Aha.
After I got tired of, you know, waiting around for somebody to notice, I said, well, let's just try to do it ourselves. And yeah, you know, Mohawk Bomb was my own little label. At the time, I had quit my job and had some money to kind of just be able to sit at home for a few months and just really push it. So I started to build this thing. You know, I was putting out compilation CDs. We put out 3 compilation CDs. We put out the Soulfound is a rock band album, which was like the final Soulfound album. I ended up producing a couple of EPs for other bands. So, you know, it was fun. It was a good run. But at that point, you know, I shouldn't have dove so hard into Mohawk Bomb because I really stopped trying to do anything, you know, to go outside that, right? Like I stopped chasing contacts and wanting to talk to labels and stuff. I just kind of became much more insulated and kind of not cut off, but I just got really jaded at that time, and I thought I could do it better than anybody else at that point. But unfortunately, It takes a lot of money to stay in business, and when music at that time was not a very, you know, profitable endeavor for a person in my position.
You know, I mean, it's funny, even you know, even back then, it was already, things were starting to change, and looking at what the music industry is now, I mean, could you even imagine running your own kind of indie label, whatever that means nowadays?
No, not at all, man. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm okay with the changes. You know, music is more accessible now than it ever has been. You know, it truly is a democratized, you know, medium, but it's also become commoditized. So there's no real value to it anymore. You know, people expect music to be for free. But you know, it is what it is, man. People love music. You know, humans in general love music. There's always going to be fans out there of whatever the music is. The music consumption is the only thing that's suffered here.
Right.
People still go out to shows. People still enjoy music. You still have fans. It's just how you make your money is a little different. So, I mean, I have no problem with it. I mean, sure, like your music becomes your business card essentially now. Like a CD is your business card. So you get people, to get to know who you are. And then from there, it's your job to bring them out to a show, sell them a shirt or, whatever.
And, you guys always did a great job of branding yourselves like that. In terms of the merchandise, in terms of having that grassroots connection with the fans, and that's almost like what you have to do now. And you guys were a little bit ahead of the curve on that, I thought.
Thanks, good. That degree came in handy for something, right?
Right. I remember the Soulfound is a rock band CD release party, and I think that's when I filmed my segment for the documentary that you guys had planned and everything, and that was such a fun night.
Yeah, I agree. It was a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun.
I'm pretty sure I probably have like an old copy of that CD and probably a Mohawk Bomb compilation somewhere in my garage. I don't know where it is, but I'm pretty sure it's there somewhere.
If you need a new one, let me know. I still have a bunch.
All right, good to know. I'll hit you up after the show. We'll do that.
I like it.
No, man, but going back to sort of your early development, like I said, I'm going to be all over the place on this one.
Yeah.
I remember a while ago, you telling me that one of your favorite bass players was Steve Harris of Iron Maiden.
Hell yeah, dude.
That's right, and that kind of blew my mind when you told me that, and you told me that you were such an Iron Maiden fan. I remember when you and I went to see them in 2009 down at Fort Lauderdale. That was a blast, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me tag along again.
No worries, man. It was fun. It's good to share that experience with a true fan.
It was a blast.
A true fan of Maiden.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that always surprised me. Not that, I knew you guys, obviously it wasn't a question of talent or a question of ability, but it's like, I remember hearing, Soulfound's music, and then you telling me you like Maiden, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. It's like, because at first I didn't really make the connection. Like I would never have suspected that you guys were into bands like Maiden, and because I loved your music with Soulfound, but it doesn't necessarily come out as like being Maiden influenced. But the closer I took a look at it, I would see the way you would kind of pick your bass, do that 3-finger gallop. And which, by the way, the fact that you played bass and sang all those years as well as you did, that is not easy to do. And I've tried it before. It's not easy. People think it's not. So I take my hat off to you for doing that as well as you have all those years, because it's very tough to do.
Well, thanks, man. And actually, you should listen to some of the older Soulfound stuff. There was a lot more Maiden dual guitar influence back then, for sure. After we went a little emo, we kind of that took a little backseat. But you can still hear it in songs like "Don't Go" from our Tomorrow Can Wait CD, and in like song like "After the Rush." It had like a double lead intro, So it still peeks his head here and there, but yeah, for sure, we definitely kind of toned it down.
Oh yeah, well, hey man, Sammy was always he's always a shredder. He could always bust that stuff out when it called for it, and I always said that he used to be able to get like certain sounds out of a Telecaster that I didn't even think was possible. So he was always just like he was the perfect guy to kind of bridge those two sounds together, I thought. So it's one of those things where it was surprising when I first heard it, but then when I looked, I'm like, oh yeah, no, there it is.
Yeah, good. Maiden's awesome. I love Maiden.
Yeah. But obviously, but that's your thing. Obviously, you guys have never really tried to copy anybody. You guys have always kind of found your own deal, your own sound, which is very tough to do.
Yeah, I don't know if that was on purpose, but stuff pops in here and there. You hear some influences for sure, peeking their heads. There's a lot of Pearl Jam also in our background, so you definitely hear a lot of that once in a while.
Gotcha. Now I know Steve Harris is a big bass influence of yours. Who is one of your favorite singers?
I don't know, man. I really don't like singers that much, to be honest.
But you are one.
But I know. But I'm a self-hating singer. Nah. I would say that all-time favorites. It's a tough one. It said Jeff Buckley's up there for sure.
Oh yeah, no, he was an amazing singer.
Sting is definitely one of my favorites.
Also a singing bass player, of course.
Singing bass player, which comes in handy.
Yeah.
That's just a lot of good music, man. It's weird. Let me think. Growing up, Axl Rose was like my homeboy. Was my like influence. So.
Oh yeah.
Axl and Appetite for Destruction was the epitome. That and James Hetfield.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So those two guys were like my intro to being a rock star.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, one of the things that I always found really interesting, and this was later on in your run, the Soulfound Sextet. Why don't you tell the listeners about what that was all about?
That's what happens when you're bored. Like I was saying before, you get bored and you do weird things.
By the way, sextet, not a dirty word. It just means 6 guys. Get your mind out of the gutter.
It was pretty sexy though.
It was. I was very, very aroused. But go ahead.
Well, actually, it's funny how that came about. Around that time, we were really into the Mars Volta and that kind of like proggier, again, kind of going back to those proggy roots. We liked the bigger band, having a lot of instruments. And we used to play with a band called Weak Sauce, who, they're February 13th. They have a reunion show too. And they played with us the last time, when we did the reunion show 3 years ago.
That's right.
So those guys were our homies. I mean, we used to play with them all the time. Back in the day, and then we became really good friends. And when they broke up, Paul and Brad from Weak Sauce, the drummer and the trumpet player, we kind of invited them to just jam with us because we thought it might be cool to have 2 drummers on some songs, and let's just add the trumpet to see what kind of layer we can add there.
Almost like a Genesis vibe with the 2 drummers.
Exactly, right? Like Allman Brothers, all those different people, when music was good, experimenting with sound. But no, so we just kind of, I don't know, man, we were just bored trying to do something different. I mean, a lot of our fans weren't into it. So, it was part of that phase 3 when things are kind of winding down. But it was good, though, because it gave rise to Rise of Saturn, which was the project that Dan and I did after Soulfound finally called it quits.
Yeah. Now, what was the process behind the band finally splitting up? Because the last guitarist that you had in the band was a guy I was in a band with. His name was Jonathan East. He and I were in a band called Dragline for a few months together, and he and I had known each other, and I guess he had known Dallas, Sam's brother-in-law, and I guess that's how that whole thing came about. But I remember. I mean, because I had known Jonathan for a long time, and I'd kind of understood all the things he was going through in his life at the time. And I remember you telling me, like, and this is before it happened, where you're like, oh, man, if things don't work out with Jonathan, I don't know if I have it in me to bring in another guitar player and go through that again and teach some new guy the songs. And I guess I'm kind of answering my own question, but was that part of like the thought process? The 3 of you just sat down and be like, you know what, maybe it's time to do something else, or I mean, what led to it, I should say.
Well, I mean, it was definitely Jonathan had some health issues there towards the end. So with Jonathan, he was like a great breath of fresh air towards the end there. He came in really wanting to be in the band. We tried out a bunch of guys. At that time, we needed a guitar player. We needed to finish that Is a Rock Band album and put it out. We just had to because we had interest. We had producers out there that we're looking to work with. We were talking about touring. I mean, there's so many things we needed to do. We had this momentum building, and we needed a guitar player. So when we found Jonathan after, felt like millions of auditions. And, something about him was refreshing. He came in really excited. He liked the band. He was a fan. He knew the songs, and, we just kind of hit it off with him. And, but you're right, man. When he started, towards the end there, he had some health issues that, just got real. It got a little scary. And I know that it must have been tough for him too to be kind of doing all this and kind of dealing with what he had. So. Like you said, I think I just got to the point I'm like, I don't think I can do it again. I can't start over. And just after just starting over again recently with Jonathan, right? So at that point, I just knew that if things didn't work out, we were just going to, kind of just call it. And it's weird how it kind of happened because we were working on that documentary. We were doing, we had a whole week-long tour kind of like ready to go. We were going to play in Gainesville. We were going to play at this place. We played in Gainesville all the time. That was going to be like the closing, show for this documentary we were working on. And it kind of was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. By working on this documentary, it just kind of put the nail in the coffin in a way, it felt like. So I guess leave it to us, right? Leave it to us to fly close to the sun and get our wings burned. For trying to be all trying to push a documentary about a local band who never went anywhere, right? So
Well, it's a nice Flight of Icarus reference, by the way.
yeah. So I don't know. So that was it, man. I mean, we were in California touring when he started having issues, and then when we got back in town, we just kind of waited for him to get better. In the meantime, things just started disintegrating, and the last thing we ever did was an interview for Creative Loafing. They had a podcast they were putting out at the time, and we went in and played a couple of songs live for them, and then that was pretty much the last Soulfound show. We kind of faded out without a big hurrah there at the end.
I mean, that's one of those things that it always baffled me at the time, just because as popular as you guys were, I was always thinking like, okay, surely there's got to be another guy up there who's willing to step up to the plate if it doesn't work out with John. I mean, I'm not trying to bash the guy. I mean, I knew John. I knew what he was going through. I also knew some of the habits he was into, and it's just personality-wise, I know he wasn't always the easiest guy to deal with, and he just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And I mean, you guys never heard from him. I never heard from him. I didn't really. He was just one of those guys. He was just a unique dude. But
yeah, I did talk to him. I talked to him once after, but yeah, like you said, he just kind of disappeared. So yeah. It's all good though,
I mean, getting back to my original point, it's like I always thought like, you would think as popular as you guys were, I mean, maybe it would have been easier to find someone who was a fan of the band already, who would be able to play and step up. But I guess there does come a point where you get fatigued of it, and so I mean, I was just wondering if that was like maybe a longer time coming than even before all the stuff with Jonathan went down.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was done. I think if I would have kept pushing it, I'm sure the guys would have kept going. But honestly, I was done. And even before Jonathan, it just got tough towards the end there, man. You know what I mean? It's just 10 years working hard, playing, the same bars, not being able to get over the hurdle, getting rejected a bunch of times, So I think that phase 3 was a dark phase when I just kind of wanted to take the world on myself because I was kind of disillusioned. And unfortunately, I think that's what did us in. But it's all good, We had we had a good run, and I'm sure we could have found somebody else, but like I said, I was just done. I didn't want to go through it again and have to start over with somebody else, and it wasn't what I wanted to do at the time. So yeah, it was time to move on.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, no one can argue with the success that you guys had locally because, and as you touched on it earlier, you guys had a reunion show about 3 years later. It was like 2012, 2013. It was at the State Theater in St. Pete. I was there, and I don't think I had ever seen the State Theater as packed as it was that night. It was you guys and Weak Sauce both having reunion shows. I mean, it just blew my mind how packed it was that night because both of those bands had such a huge local reputation. I mean, what was that like coming back for you? Not only revisiting those old songs, playing with those guys again, but just seeing the reaction.
That was awesome. I mean, we can't take all that credit. I mean, there were a lot of great bands on that bill. Weak Sauce brought half those people. We had Elevated playing, who brought a bunch of people as well, and we used to play with them a lot back in the day as well. And this was their reunion show. And then we had the Gita, which was a big band, back when we first moved down here. They were a big band back then, and they just got together, for a couple of shows around that time. So it was like a little reunion fever going on, and together, all of us, we had I think about 500 people out there.
Yeah.
And it was great that people were into it, and we, in typical Soulfound fashion, we played a super long set where we played like 20 something songs, and we just had the rotating guitar players coming in and out, and all kinds of ridiculousness. So I mean, we wanted to do it up.
Gotcha.
So it was great. It was great to play a lot of those songs. I mean, it's funny because when we practiced, it was a little rusty because all of us hadn't played together in a while, especially the two of the guitar players, Gary and Piccolo, both played with us.
Right.
And those guys were, they hadn't played really with us for a while. So yeah, no, it was weird at first, and it was a little bittersweet for me, kind of just, it's like, seeing your ex after a while, you used to have great sex, but when you fought, and you hated each other over everything else. Like that's what a show was like. It felt like a sexual experience, and then the rest of the time it was a chore. So, but then once we got there and we saw people out there and our friends, and it's just people singing songs and going, having fun with us. It just, it was a great way to kind of cap everything off. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's also one of those things that I admired about you guys, is that you and Dan, Disco as you call him, and Sammy. I mean, you guys all. It seemed to me like there wasn't any bad blood when you guys split, so it must have been nice. Just, I mean, you guys have kind of kept your friendship over the years, which I think is really refreshing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and Dan, Disco is my musical girlfriend. So, I mean, him and I have, been pretty much joined at the hip for the last 15 years.
He's your hetero life mate.
Hey, if he ever asked me, I'd be like, oh, okay, man, I'll give you a reach around. It's all good. Man. If I had to give him, if I had to give him a kidney or something, I totally would. So, and Sam and Sam and we've remained friends. I mean, there's no bad blood there. And Gary, the first guy to quit, we're still friends, really good friends, and Piccolo, good friends. And there's a couple of guys who are in the middle there that I'm not necessarily on good terms with. But,
well, that happens.
It's been a lot of guitar players, man. Definitely, it's like Spinal Tap has the drummer situation. We have the guitar player situation.
Right. Well, so. I mean, thankfully, no one died that we know of.
That we know of.
Yeah, right. But I remember at the reunion show going to you, I'm like, man, you guys got to make this like an annual event or something like that, because I know you weren't interested in doing it full time, but it was one of those things where it's like seeing the crowd and seeing how passionate they were. I'm like, man, you guys should probably think about doing this either like once a year or once every couple of years. And I guess speaking of that, you and I talked a few months ago. Is there anything that you'd like to announce right here on the show?
Jack, we're having a baby.
Well, you and I. You and I?
On April 9th, we're having a rock and roll baby.
Are you sure it's mine?
I hope so.
Oh, okay.
You're the only other band that I've talked to about this. No, so April 9th has been confirmed today, finally solidified that Soulfound is playing again, April 9th, 2016 at the local 662 in St. Pete, downtown St. Pete. And our you guys are playing with us, Vertebreaker.
Yep, Vertebreaker will be there. That. It's our first St. Pete show in like 2 years, so it's so it's been a long time coming. And I think there's another band that reunited that's gonna be there. Yeah,
Trace of Day.
Yes.
We used to play with those guys all the time.
Yeah.
Back in the mid 2000s there. So Chuck got pretty much most of the original lineup back together. And they've actually played a couple of shows. I think they're going to be back playing more frequently, but so that's good for them. I used to love them back then, so I'm glad I get to play with them again. And
yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, during the live stage days, we played quite a few shows with those guys as well. So that's it's exciting for me.
Yeah, me too, man. Those guys, again, we shared a lot of stages with those guys, and we played a lot together. And we actually have kept in touch. So Chuck and Nate. Had a band called Trust for Liars after Trace of Day called it quits, and we played with them when I was with Rise of Saturn, and when I was in Beautiful Corpses also. So we've kept in touch, we've played together, and of course when Trace of Day got back together, he reached out to see what I was doing. I told him that we were thinking about a Soulfound show in 2016, and kind of lined it up, and here we are.
That's awesome. And once again, I want to say thank you for having my band on that show. We don't really have a really big, following in St. Pete or anything like that. But I mean, it's going to be an honor for us to be there and to kind of celebrate this reunion show with you guys and meet some of your fans, and hopefully they like us. But mainly I know it's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys and Trace of Day that night. I definitely don't want to forget about the other bands that you've had, since Soulfound. Obviously, Beautiful Corpses and Rise of Saturn were two bands you were in with some of the Weak Sauce guys. I think Dan was in one or two of those bands as well. What were those bands like? Are they any of them still together, or what are you up to right now?
Well, Rise of Saturn, that was kind of like the evolution after the Soulfound sextet. essentially it's three of the guys from Weak Sauce, Eric, Paul, and Brad, and then me and Dan. We have this kind of funk, progressive, rock, reggae kind of thing going on. And we play once in a while. We were we were more active back in 2009, 2010, around there. Now we just play a couple of shows a year, mostly up here in Dunedin at the Dunedin Brewery for some of their bigger events.
Cool.
Then I did Beautiful Corpses for a little while. My buddy Ryan had some demos and he wanted to put a band together. So Paul, who was in Weak Sauce and Rise of Saturn, he played drums. And then I played bass, and we had another guy, Eric, play guitar, and Ryan, and we played. It was kind of like a Zeppelin-y kind of riff rock kind of band. It was really cool. We did that for a little bit, but that ran its course. It wasn't never supposed to be a long-term thing, but we kind of stretched it out. And then now, I've always had my project Red Light Stare, which is where I would take a lot of the Soulfound leftover materials and kind of work it there. And Dan, would play with me on that. We've done a few shows with a couple of different guys on guitar and bass. And I'm working on another band. I always got stuff cooking. I just never have time to finish it.
Yeah, you do. You always have stuff going on. You always have had stuff going on. Like I remember for a while, and I don't know if you're still doing this. I know you were still. I know that you were, contributing some articles for Creative Loafing for a few years. Yeah. And you had some other business ventures going on, obviously with Mohawk Bomb, but with some other things. And besides playing live, what are some of the other ways that you're sort of keeping active in the music scene that maybe I forgot?
No, lately I've been pretty out of it, to be honest. The last couple of years, I've kind of stepped back and haven't been doing that much. But yeah, before that I was writing for Creative Loafing. I was just doing everything I could, wherever I could, to just do stuff and stay plugged in and find ways to promote and hone in the promotional skills or producing skills or recording skills. Like there was always something cooking. But I've been pretty out of it, man. I used to spend every weekend in a bar, playing, and now I'm getting older, and I rather Netflix than chill some Friday nights. So. So I haven't been as with it, lately, but.
Yeah, well, obviously you got other priorities now. Obviously, being a husband and a father, that's definitely much more important than anything any of us have done. So it's
tough. It's tough work, man. It's fun. It's my retirement plan. I'm trying to teach the girls how to play drums.
Right? Yeah. No, I've seen the videos on there, man. There are some of them. They're pretty solid.
They're awesome.
They got some future rock stars in the Peña household, man. I'm telling you.
It's like I can't explain to you the feeling of like sitting in the garage with them like jamming out, and I'm playing guitar and I'm playing Kashmir by Zeppelin, and one of my daughters is just laying the groove like Bonham would, and then we play like Back in Black by AC/DC, and the other one's like laying this groove, and I'm like, it's amazing. We were playing what was it this weekend? Billie Jean by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
We put it on the PA, and we're just like jamming along to the drums, like the two of us. So
funny thing is, I didn't even know that you played drums because I saw you play drums, but it doesn't surprise me. You play bass, guitar, and everything else, so it doesn't really surprise me at all. But it was really cool to see, and it looks like you're having a lot of fun with your girls. They're growing up. They're growing up really fast. I've seen them grow up on social media practically.
Pretty much.
Yeah. They're beautiful, man. You must be really proud.
Thank you, man. I am definitely the best project I've worked on. For sure.
Nice. Hey, everyone in 10, 15 years, look out for the Peña twins, man. They're going to be tearing it up.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man. So it sounds like it sounds like you're in a good place as far as like looking back on what you've done before, and seeing where you are now. You're still staying active. I think that's really, really cool, and I'm proud to be a part of this reunion show, man. I'm glad that you decided to include us on there, and we probably who knows who knows what kind of draw we have in Tampa St. Pete anymore, but definitely I can't wait for this show, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm just always trying to stay on top of what you got going on, man, because you always put out quality stuff.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, and I'm stoked to have you guys play. I'm just stoked to be playing with you again. I haven't had a chance to see this band yet, so that kind of works.
Definitely, man. And I'm still holding out for that Iron Maiden tribute band we're going to start together.
Hey, I got the bass.
Let's do it.
If you want to do the Bruce, I'll do the Steve. You know what I mean?
Sounds good, man. Ivan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this. Any final thoughts? Any final words of wisdom you want to leave for all the young cats, up and coming musicians out there?
Words of wisdom. Stay in school. No. Don't let anybody else tell you what's good and what's not. There's fans out there for everybody. There are enough people on this planet that you're bound to find enough people to celebrate and enjoy what you do. So don't give up. Don't let the haters bring you down, and have fun, man. When it stops being fun, and it's not worth doing anymore. So.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Ivan Peña, you're awesome. Thank you for having me on your show. Thanks for being on my show, and for me being on your show, I should say. I'm kind of talking in circles here, but it's only because I'm excited to have you on. You and I go way back, and I'm psyched that you're a fellow musician and a guy I consider to be a good friend. So this is really cool. Thank you for being on the show, man.
Likewise, man. Thank you.
Thanks again to Ivan Peña of Soulfound, Beautiful Corpses, Rise of Saturn, Mohawk Bomb Records. The list goes on and on. Just an amazingly talented, hardworking guy who he continues to inspire me after all these years. Again, if you're in the St. Pete area, make sure you come to our show on Saturday, April 9th at the local 662. It's going to be Soulfound and Trace of Day. Two great St. Pete area bands reunited, and Vertebraker will be opening the show. Definitely make sure you come out to that. And actually, before I close this episode, before I get into all the upcoming events, I want to take this time to acknowledge a very close friend of mine who I recently lost. His name was Javier Roldan. He was a friend of mine for over 7 years. He was born with spina bifida, which is a horrible spinal disease that makes it nearly impossible to walk without the aid of crutches or a wheelchair. This was a guy who, despite all his physical ailments, had just one of the most fun, outgoing personalities I've ever met. I mean, he was such a friendly person. Just from the moment I met him, he and I clicked right away. He was only 34 years old, but he lived an incredible life. He was an ambassador for the March of Dimes and got the chance to meet many of his favorite musicians, people like Carlos Santana, Slash, Ace Frehley. The list goes on and on. As a child, he actually appeared with several other kids in the halftime show of the Super Bowl. It was back in 1991. It was at the old Tampa Stadium. The show itself was featured like characters from Walt Disney World, and I believe New Kids on the Block was the musical guest at that time. And there's still video footage of him, as one of the kids in the crowd, at that show. It's circulating somewhere. He and I would go to concerts together. We'd go out, and just always have a good time. He and I had several inside jokes as well. He would always make a joke. He used to make a joke that I was the preppiest dude in a rock band, that because of the way I dressed or whatever. I guess in his mind, he thought I was a little bit straight-laced and a little bit preppier than most guys in rock bands. So he would always call me preppy. I'd call him Slater right back. Just a great guy. If everyone who got the chance, everyone I knew who knew him, just knew what a great person he was. And I was talking with him the week that he passed away. So it sucks, but I'm just glad that he's no longer in pain, and I'm definitely going to miss him very much. As far as some other upcoming events, with Vertebraker, catch us on April 2nd at the County Line Saloon. We will be playing actually an MMA event. We're the musical guest for that night. It's called the Bar Brawl. It is brought to you by the Extreme Fighting Alliance. Definitely check that out if you get the chance. And also, later this year, check us out on May 7th at the Landfill Saloon in Melbourne. We will be playing with our good friends Delacoma, Earn, and the Travis Daigle Band. Should be an amazing show. We have a few other shows coming up that I can't announce yet, but definitely stay tuned. It'll be a lot of good stuff happening in the world of Vertebreaker. So we're very excited about that. That's it for this week. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at JackXConnor and like me on Facebook at facebook.com/JackConnorMusic. Also, feel free to check out the band at www.vertebreaker.net. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure you email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com or tweet me with the hashtag Phoenix Report. If you're listening to this on YouTube or iTunes, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and go back and listen to all the other episodes. Thank you for listening. This has been the Phoenix Report with Jack Connor on the twobadbrains.com.